Good morning and welcome to Fellows Monthly Self-Direction webinar, where we review important topics to help you successfully self-direct your services. Please note this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on Fellows website, along with the presentation on our Forms and Resources page under Webinars. I'm Peter Cook, Director of Stakeholder Relations, and I'm here with Lee McHarg, Director of Employer Resources, and Mark Weinstein, Senior Director of Self-Directed Services. And today we will be reviewing important employee forms. Today we will be reviewing employee change forms and termination and inactivation forms, best practices for using the forms, and the location of the forms and where to submit them. If you do have any questions, we have a Q&A module in Zoom that you can use to ask a question. We just ask that you wait until the end of the presentation to ask a question, as we may answer it during the course of the presentation. What is an employee change form? An employee change form is a form a participant must submit to update an employee's information. Submission of this form is required for Fellow to update the information for the employee. When is an employee change form needed? An employee change form is required if an employee changes their name, mailing address, email, or phone number, if an employee needs a new service code added, or if an employee needs a rate increase or decrease. Please note maximum rates and rate start dates depend upon the participant's current budget. Who needs to sign the employee change form? Both the participant or their authorized representative and the employee must sign the change form. This can be done electronically. The employee change form is located on our Forms and Resources page of our website, www.fellow.org/self-directed services. The employee change form can be found under the Employee Forms and Resources section. To submit a completed employee change form, participants can send the completed form to sdsemployeeupdates@fellow.org. What are the processing timelines for employee change forms? For updated contact information, the change will be made within a week of submission. For the addition of service codes, please allow 2 business days. For updated pay rates, the change will become effective the next pay period after the period in which the form is received. Please note Fellow does not process retroactive pay. What are some best practices for employee change forms? Please be sure both the participant and the employee sign the form. Fellow cannot process a change form without both the participant and employee signature. Please be sure to include an effective date for the change. Fellow cannot process a form with no effective date. Continuing with best practices, please make sure the code or rate you are modifying is included in your budget. Fellow cannot process changes that do not align with the participant budget. If you are adding a service code, please remember to include the rate. If the budget includes a service with a 2-to-1 staff ratio, you should specify the service code you are adding is for 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 services. If the budget includes holidays, please make sure you specify whether the code being added is for paid holiday off or PTO or for paid holiday worked. If an employee is to be paid the regular rate of pay for working on a holiday, they can use the regular service code. Participants should make sure all necessary information is provided on the change form before submitting it. Please note that missing information will delay processing. Next up, Lee McHarg will take us through the employee separation and inactivation form.
Thank you, Peter. An employee separation and inactivation form is a form that is submitted by a participant when an employee is going to be temporarily inactive for a period not to exceed 18 months, or when an employee is voluntarily or involuntarily separated from employment. Only the participant needs to sign this form, and electronic signatures are acceptable. Next slide, please. The separation and inactivation form is needed when an employee has requested to be temporarily inactive, when the employee has voluntarily resigned, or when employment has involuntarily ended. It's important that the form be submitted immediately upon separation or inactivation. Next slide, please. For involuntary separations, please provide the issues that led to separation, documentation of prior warnings and specific details of issues leading up to separation, names of any witnesses, a written statement describing the final incident that led to separation, and let us know if you would be interested in being a witness, if required, for an unemployment hearing. Next slide, please. For voluntary separations, please provide the reason for resignation, the amount of notice the employee provided, the documented issues leading up to resignation, if applicable, what terms the employee left on, if the employee is eligible for rehire, if you would contest an unemployment claim, and let us know if you would be interested in being a witness, if required, for an unemployment hearing. Next slide, please. There are several reasons for that an employee may request to be temporarily inactive for their employment status, such as during the summer months when school is not in session, periods of time when college students are away at school, or periods of time when an employee is out on medical leave. Next slide, please. Employees can be placed in an inactive status after 6 months of inactivity. This change in status does not close out the employee. Inactivation allows employees to remain on the employer's payroll without having to go through multiple employee application and onboarding processes. Next slide, please. Participants have the option of extending the 6-month inactivation period by up to 12 months via written request for a total of 18 months of inactivity. As the employer, participants are responsible for notifying us when they are ready to reactivate their employee. Upon notification of an employee's expected return to work, we are required to confirm that the employee meets the requirements of employment prior to reactivation. Please note, if the 18-month period of inactivity is exceeded, the employee's employment will be terminated and they will be required to reapply. To initiate the rehire process, submit a new hire packet with a copy of the current CPR and first aid training certifications. Next slide, please. The separation and inactivation form is conveniently located on our website under Forms and Resources at www.fellow.org/self-directed services. Next slide, please. Participants can submit completed employee separation and inactivation forms to SDS Employee Relations at fellow.org for processing. Next slide, please. In summary, All fields on the employee separation and inactivation form should be completed in full, and the form should be submitted immediately upon inactivation or separation. It's important to document the employee's date last worked accurately on the form so that the employee is paid appropriately and their access is not revoked prematurely. Fellow requires detailed and timely information in the event that the employee claims unemployment. Next slide.
Okay, thanks so much, Lee. Next up, we wanted to see if anyone has any questions related to either of these forms. If you have a question, you could add it to the question and answer module in Zoom.
First question is, will we get a copy of the PowerPoint?
We will post a copy of the PowerPoint to the Forms and Resources page of Fellows website under webinars.
So it'll be the copy of the PowerPoint plus this recording will be on there.
Correct.
Will Fellow let us know if the form that was submitted needs to be revised?
Yes, if an employee change form is submitted and it cannot be processed for some reason, the processor will send an email to the team letting them know why the form couldn't be processed.
That would be for either form that we talked about today.
Correct.
Yeah. How soon after you receive a form would you acknowledge the receipt of the form?
I think generally you should get an automated acknowledgement of receipt. Otherwise, the form would be processed on the standard timelines that we mentioned on the slide earlier. Or if there's a reason the form couldn't be processed, the team would get a response, pretty quickly.
The forms discussed, does this cover family members?
Yes, these forms would be applicable to an employee who is a family as staff.
Okay. If you have more than one service code rate change, do you have to use one form or can you use more than one form?
You could use one form. It would be per employee, but you can include more than one code for a rate change on one form. You would just want to be clear if the rates were different.
Can all employment forms, including new employees, be electronically signed?
Yes, you can electronically sign a form. I don't know if Lee wants to jump in about the termination form, but the change form can be electronically signed.
That is correct. That can be signed digitally as well.
Can notification be sent that the form has been processed?
We could certainly take that feedback.
These are good questions. I think this was asked earlier about getting notification that the form has been received.
There should be an auto notification when a form is submitted noting that we've received it. But, if you send it to SDS employee updates, talking about the change form here, send it to SDS employee updates at fellow.org, then the form will definitely be received and reviewed.
Some suggestion here, could Fellow do a webinar, the budget modification process from start to finish? We probably will do that. We did that recently or a few months ago. We can do that one again. And then could you do other nitty gritty webinars? Sure. Send us some suggestions and we will take that into account.
Yeah, just send us your recommendations. You can put it in the Q&A now, or you could email us directly or place a ticket.
Can we hire an employee who has an out-of-state driver's license?
Yes, we can. That's complicated, but yes. I mean, it depends what service they're providing. They would be providing the service in the state. But yes, they can have an out-of-state driver's license.
Is there a minimum amount of hours a family staff has to work in the 3-month period? I don't know of any minimums.
No.
Family staff can only work 40 hours a week, but that's the only limitation there. Do you know if legal guardians can be hired as paid staff in the self-directed model?
You would want to check DDA's regulations, but as far as I know, they can.
Yeah, I can't think of any reason why they would not be able to.
Yeah.
Regarding new hire packet, the forms were submitted in January, but because the waiver application is still pending, the employees have not been cleared. They have to redo and resubmit the forms using the new forms with Fellow name branded by July 1st.
That is correct.
Does Fellow still process off-cycle payments? Yes. Retro payments? No.
Off cycle, would be if someone submits their payroll late after the standard payroll calendar deadline, then depending on how late it was, the payment would be on the next Friday after the standard payroll Friday or just the next payroll Friday.
Is there a limit on hours per day? I usually do 14 hours on the weekend and have been paid, but wonder if there are a limit to shifts. Not the shifts, it's just 40 hours a week is the limit.
Did that question specify family as staff, Mark?
Yes, as family.
Oh, gotcha.
Well, it also depends on how you're related to the participant. There's specific people who actually are family of staff, and that can be found in DDA's manual.
Are we still waiting on questions, Mark?
A couple more coming in. I'm just reviewing them. How does an employee who is inactive return to be active?
So the participant is responsible for letting us know the date that the employee will be returning. And then at that time, we confirm that nothing has changed, that all certifications are still valid. And then we reactivate effective the date that the participant provides us that the employee will be returning.
If we have pending payments before Fellow was involved that were not paid, do we need to fill the form again with Fellow logo? I'm assuming this would be invoices submitted. If they've already been submitted with the ARC logo, etc., they're okay for us to review. July 1st forward, we would need them to be using the Fellow logo. Is it budget modification webinar on the website? I think it is, but it sounds like maybe that might be the next one we do. Get some recommendations for that one. If a staff member completes CPR training, what form do they use for reimbursement?
They would submit a vendor payment request form along with the certification showing that they completed the training, including the in-person portion for both CPR and first aid. And then they would include the receipt along with any proof of payment to SDS vendor@fellow.org. And the vendor payment request form can be found on the forms and resources page of our website under accounts payable.
Okay. Some of these questions are not exactly related, but it's okay. Can Fellow issue a list of the billing codes to be used for mileage reimbursement forms? For example, can personal supports enhanced mileage be billed as billing code X on the Fellow mileage reimbursement form? So yes, it can be. And I think we are looking to add additional codes for the mileage form for it to be more clear. Peter, do you have anything else to add there?
No, it's a timely question because we will be making sure that we include the personal supports enhanced as its own code on the form. I think right now people are just using personal supports for both, but they are separate waiver codes and are only, only one is approved for some budgets and only one is in others. So we will ensure that we include that on the updated mileage form this week.
Okay. The vendor submits their invoice to me once per month. Do you know if I should be signing the vendor's employee timesheets every 2 weeks?
Could you repeat that question, Mark?
Sure. The vendor submits their invoice to me once per month. Do you know if I should be signing their vendor employee timesheets every 2 weeks?
So for vendor payments, the participant would just submit either a signed vendor invoice or a invoice along with the signed vendor payment request form. They don't necessarily need to sign the vendor employees' timesheets as long as they're signing off on the total invoice. That said, any invoice submission does need to include the employees who, provided the work and what their hours were, in addition to other requirements that can be found in the DDA's manual. Our vendor payment request form also includes a list of invoice requirements.
Right. So sign the VPR, then just include the timesheets in so we can see specifically when the employees worked and which employees they were.
Yeah, because the employees need to have CPR and first aid training, for example.
Is the employer ID going to change on paperwork submitted? I wonder if that's related to some people getting new department numbers. I'm not sure.
Or maybe related to the rebrand. I think either way, no, the answer would be no. I mean, participants generally use the 4-digit number, as an identifier. So if you have your 4-digit number now, that's what you can continue using.
Right. How do you add PTO to a timesheet?
Can I go back just, Mark, on that
Sure.
last question? I would note that for new participants who are enrolling, their ID number, identification number will be more than 4 digits now, starting with a C, and that'll actually be the same consumer number that the participant sees in EVI, but we're not changing the number for participants that have already been enrolled in the program.
Right. Okay. So how do you add PTO to a timesheet?
So if your budget includes, if your budget sheet includes an allocation for PTO, which would be tied to whatever services are approved in your detailed service authorization, such as personal supports or CDS. The team would want to submit employee change forms requesting that the PTO code, including the rate and the service that it's tied to, is added for whichever employee needs PTO. It would be the same thing for, holiday work or holiday as well. But to be clear, Fellow doesn't just automatically add PTO codes or holiday codes for employees because it's on the budget sheet. The participant would make the decision about, which employees are getting which codes and what the rates are for those.
So you are still listed as the ARC on the SDS budget sheet. Do you know when DDA will update that to fellow? It's a good question. I'm not sure we have an answer to that one. We've asked to be
Don't think
updated.
we have an answer to that one yet.
Right. Still okay to use it. Is it necessary to deactivate an employee if you know they will be providing services every certain amount of months a year?
No, we only need it if they will be inactive for a period of 6 months. We will put them in an inactive status for 6 months. And then if it's going to be beyond that, then we can put them leave them in an inactive status for up to 18 months. So actually up to the first 6 months, you're fine. Anything beyond that, we would want that in writing just so that, we know that they haven't left employment without anyone letting us know.
Okay. Do you have to use the EVI system to record your time if you are family of staff?
Yes.
Peter, can you talk about if they need to use the app or record an EVI as a family of staff and how they get approved for that to not use the app?
Well, it would really depend on whether or not, an employee is a live-in caregiver, which it wouldn't necessarily need to be a staff member, although that is usually the case. But so, I mean, if you are living with the participant, you could contact the participant CCS to submit a request to have a live-in caregiver EVV exemption. That would need to be submitted to the DDA. They have the requirements on their website. And if the DDA approves the annual exemption for the live-in caregiver employee, they would not have to clock into the EVI app in real time. However, they would still need to manually enter shifts in the EVI portal.
Do you have to include all your participants on vendor form for CPR reimbursement? Plus, do all participants have to sign off on one form?
Assuming that this person is referring to an employee who works for more than one participant, it would really be up to each of the two participants to, submit reimbursements. Their budgets could be different. One plan might include, different reimbursement amounts, or they might use a different trainer. So that would be something to discuss with your employer, the participant.
Are there a list of service codes?
There's a list of service codes in the new hire packet on the applicant data and payroll form. So the applicant data and payroll form, you'll see the first 3 pages, and then the pages that follow that have lists all of the service codes.
Okay.
I would just note that any code that is submitted on an employee change form, needs to be on the participant budget sheet, and any service like personal supports or CDS, et cetera, should be approved in the service authorization of the participant's PCP.
Yeah. How is holiday pay activated?
If the participant budget sheet includes lines for like holiday work or holiday, paid time off, then the participant would submit a signed employee change form requesting the service code with whatever rate they're going to pay to the SDS employee updates at fellow.org email.
Will all active employees be required to submit new employee paperwork with the fellow logo at some point?
Yes. The last day we can accept it is June 30th. As of July 1, all new hire paperwork must have the new logo on it. So if anyone has employees or applicants that are in process now, you want to push to get the paperwork completely updated and to clearance prior to this date to avoid having to redo the paperwork.
If I understand the question correctly, also, if she's asking or he is asking about active employees, if you're already active, we
Oh.
wouldn't need fellow paperwork. But what you said, Lee, is correct. I just want to clarify for anyone who's actually active, we wouldn't need fellow paperwork.
Yeah, thank you, Mark.
Yep. What is the website to find these forms?
The question was just asking for our web address.
Yes, the website to find the forms.
So you can go to fellow.org and then under forms and resources.
Mhm. If my budget has PTO, do I have to submit an employee change form with PTO as a code?
Yes, the participant will need to submit the employee change form for any employees that they want to add the code for. That is not something that's automatically added just because it's in the budget sheet.
Does Fellow offer insurance benefits for employees?
No.
But the participant can decide to reimburse for insurance premiums.
Correct.
for
Yeah.
employees.
Yeah, correct. If an employee is asking the question, they would want to talk to the participant employer about the benefits that are being offered.
Right. Can Fellow conduct a webinar for the initial and revised PCB budget processing timeline? Sure. We've done that before. We can do it again. Once you are hired, do all the forms roll over each year unless there's a change? For example, the tax forms for family and staff, living with a parent, etc. I get confused at tax time. I think we all do.
Yes,
Well,
everything will roll over unless there has been a change.
Right. So if there's changes, please submit updated paperwork. Can monies allocated for taxes be used for regular pay within our budget modification?
If the person submitting the question is referring to the taxes line of the budget,
I think that's what is being asked.
you could feasibly mod money from that line, to another line, but again, if the taxes line is depletes, then payments would not be able to be processed for whatever service the taxes line was allocated for.
Right.
Sense.
Can a vendor be paid for mileage?
Fellow does not process mileage payments for vendors.
Is there a form that we can receive at tax time stating that we are tax exempt?
If an employee is tax exempt, like if they were a live-in caregiver, that would be income tax exempt. They could request a confirmation letter from the employer resources team by placing a ticket requesting it.
Does a family staff employee need to get special approval to work on a holiday?
Again, that would be up to the participant employer. There's not like a program rule around that.
For what services can we hire a student with an out-of-state driver's license? Lee could give a couple examples.
It could be any service as long as the service is being provided within the state. Personal supports, respite, CDS. Yeah,
right. And within the person's budget.
Exactly.
Are we still using the Bill app? Yes. For vendor payments. Do you honor the wage exception forms that were approved last year, or do they need to be submitted every year?
If a team has an approved wage exception form from a previous plan year, that would roll over, to the next plan year, provided that whatever rates the participant is requesting for the team are either below what's on the wage exception form, or if the wage on the wage exception form exceeds the DDA's new reasonable and customary max rates, they would need to ensure that any rates that are requested are below the new rate caps.
Some people asking about the pay rates for current pay rates and then after or starting at 7/1. If you go on DDA's website and look at their self-directed services manual, all that information is provided there. Please provide your web address again.
Fellow.org, FELLO.org.
It's a question about, I guess it says personal support staff lives half time on campus and half with the participant. Is he or she still tax exempt?
Can you repeat that question, Mark?
Sure. It sounds like someone who's providing personal supports lives half their time on campus. I guess they go to college, and then half the time with the participant. And they're asking if the employee would be tax exempt as a live-in caregiver.
No, they would have to be living full-time with the participant with no other address.
If you hire a vendor in 2025, can you pay the hourly rate chosen by the participant as long as it is within the new DDA wage regulations, for example, CDS or personal supports? And I would say as long as it's within reasonable customary rates, the participant can choose what rate to pay. Yeah,
just with the addition that, it would depend on what's approved in the participant's PCP and their the concomitant budget sheet.
Could you please repeat your answer about wage exception forms? You mentioned a rollover from the prior year. but also new reasonable customary rates. There's new rates effective July 1st, which is I think Tuesday. Check DD's website, and they'll give that information for you. But there's a wage exception form that we have, those rates will stay within a person's budget as long as the participant chooses to use that rate until 7/1, which at that point we have to reduce it down to the maximum exception rate, unless we get an employee change form lowering it to something below the exception maximum. Hopefully that's clear enough for you.
And I would just note, related to wage exceptions, Fellow can only go by what's on the approved budget sheet. So if a team has wage exceptions from the previous plan year and they submit a budget sheet with, rates that are lower than that, then, a budget modification would be required.
Can a family member be a vendor for CDS?
Yes, but the family of staff 40-hour limit would still apply.
Waiting for more questions. Can monies be allocated for taxes to be used for regular pay without a budget modification?
No.
Can respite hours be at home or in the community location? I don't think there's any. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I think, were you going to say that there's no requirement there?
Correct. Oh, that's a good question. If we hire an employee from out of state, what taxes will be applied?
So an employee who lives out of state, we will pay, if an employee fills out the tax form for that state that they live in, if a state touches the state of Maryland, then we will do their state taxes for them. We have state tax forms on our website. If they live in another state that does not touch the state of Maryland, they just fill out the Maryland MW 507 and just fill it out how they want, claiming exempt for not paying Maryland taxes. And then they would take care of their taxes for their specific state at the end of the year. Hopefully that answers your question.
I was told the mileage reimbursement amount increased. How do I get my PCP to reflect that change?
Could you repeat that question, Mark?
Sure. I was told the mileage reimbursement amount increased.
There is nothing to repeat.
How do I get my PCP to reflect the change? And I think you just work with your CCS and update the amount of your mileage reimbursement in your budget. Anything to add there?
That sounds good.
Okay. Can FAS family staff do 40 hours personal supports and then additional hours as day to day? It'd be no, you can only do 40 hours, up to 40 hours a week. Can family staff get paid overtime? Only if it's approved by DDA. Where can we check to see if the wage exceptions have already been applied?
You could check the current rates in the budget.
Mm-hmm. We were planning to vacation out of state. Will personal supports get paid for this service? And I'll answer that. Go ahead, Peter.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, the answer is yes, unless you're out of state for such a long time that, like, for example, your CCS isn't able to do their quarterly visits. But most of the time, if it's just a typical kind of vacation out of state, yes, you can log in your personal support hours with the participant, obviously. Can fellow reimburse health insurance premium to an employee who purchased his health insurance not direct from the health insurance company? Not sure what it means from the health insurance company. But reimbursement for health insurance is something that the participant can decide to offer to employees. And we can reimburse that if we get the information needed.
And if the participant has health insurance reimbursements included in the PCP, they would need to have a policy for the employees outlining, what their policy is.
All right. A few questions about logging on vacation out of state. Yes, we have confirmed with DDA that people can take vacation. People need to be taking a vacation too. And if they need support, then that's something that you can provide. Timely question, since the summertime, people ready for vacation. Can mileage be recorded for vacation?
I believe so.
As long as you're providing that support, yes. Can I move my PTO budget to nursing?
I think that would be a question for the participant CCS.
We have 80 hours of personal supports. Can we add a day-to-day staff? If yes, what is the max hours a week day-to-day staff can have?
To include day-to-day administrative supports in a plan, revised budget is required. It must be tied to an outcome in the PCP. So that would be something to discuss with the CCS. I don't think what's the current limit, Mark?
It's 40 hours a week.
40 hours a week, although that could be subject to change
Correct.
in the future.
Will the logins to the participant dashboard be changing?
We will be updating the link to FMSE in the future. We don't have an exact date for that yet, but we will be sure that we notify all participants and team members when that web address changes. Right now, it still says the ARC, but it will be updated to Fellow. And when we do that, everyone will be notified. The link will be updated on the website, etc.
Okay. Can an employee take a participant who lives in Montgomery County to a park or house riding activity just across the river to Arlington or Fairfax County, Virginia? It sounds like not unless it's a vacation. No, you can. That's okay. So mileage can be reimbursed from the home to vacation location. I would say as long as you're providing that service to the participant, like personal supports or CDS, I guess it would be personal supports, then I don't see why it would not be reimbursed. Peter or Lee, do you have any other thoughts on that one?
I would just note that, yeah, the employee would need to be clocked in and providing, a
Mhm.
service that is, approved in the PCP in order to submit that mileage time.
Oh, good question. Here is day-to-day administrator hours changing to only 10 hours a month on October 6th. So that is a recommendation you probably know the DDA is putting in their waiver amendment to go into effect in October. It's just a recommendation right now. So that is the plan, but it's not finalized yet. Let's see some individual questions here. If you have, specific questions, you can always place a ticket. We'll take a look at individual situations. Waiting for more questions to come in. By the way, that question about the day-to-day admin or any other waiver amendment questions, that I think we're still in the period of public feedback. I think there's a webinar coming up next week, and then there's ability to provide your feedback if you have any questions or thoughts about the proposed waiver amendments that DDA has. Well, everyone needs to adjust the PCP for day-to-day admin hours. Peter, you want to just repeat about the revised plan as needed?
I'm not really sure about the question. Are they referring to when or if the total number of hours are modified?
Well, modified, or just to make sure that the PCP has day-to-day admin within the PCP and tied to an outcome. That's a requirement to have day-to-day admin services added. So if you have it in your plan and it's tied to an outcome and you're not adjusting hours, then nothing else is needed from the PCP perspective.
Have we got any more questions, Mark?
Let's see. Nothing related to the topic.
Got it. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I think we can wrap it up. Great. As always, if you do think of a question later, feel free to submit a customer service ticket through Zendesk. We thank you for attending the webinar today, and we will be posting both the recording and the presentation under webinars on the forms and resources page of our site. Thanks so much.
Thank you.